The air in the Grand Conclave chamber was thin and smelled faintly of ozone and alien musk. Hundreds of delegates from 100 species sat in tiered rows, their varied forms a testament to the Galactic Council's diversity. On the central holographic stage, Fleet Commander Kong Subin of the Vel-Terran hegemony stood rigid, his scaled skin reflecting the chamber's pale blue light. His 4 eyes, set in a narrow, bony face, swept across the silent audience before settling on the small human delegation. Kim Eugene sat at the human envoy's table, her back straight, her hands folded neatly on the cool surface. She wore the simple gray uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. Her dark eyes were fixed on Subin, her expression professionally neutral, but her stomach was a knot of cold dread. The message had arrived only hours ago, an urgent, unscheduled declaration before the full council. No one said the word war, but it hung in the recycled air. Delegates of the council, Subin began, his voice a synthesized, grating baritone from his translation unit. The Vel-Terran hegemony can no longer tolerate the unchecked expansion and cultural contamination of the species known as humanity. Their colonies creep towards our sovereign borders. Their chaotic essence disrupts the harmony of nearby systems. Eugene's aide, a young man named Park Min-soo, leaned over, his voice a tense whisper. Cultural contamination? We traded them music files and agricultural data. That's all. Eugene gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. The reasons didn't matter. This was a play for power, a pretext. The Vel-Terran were militaristic, proud, and saw humanity's recent peaceful integration into the council as a weakness to be exploited. Subin continued, listing minor grievances that sounded absurd when spoken in the Grand Chamber. But then his tone shifted, filling with unmistakable pride. In the face of this provocation, and to secure the safety of the galactic community from human unpredictability, the hegemony will act. We do not make this decision lightly. We are fortified by the certainty of our purpose and the power of our new will. The central hologram changed. The image of Subin shrank, replaced by a stunning, terrifying display. Ships, dozens of them, hundreds. They were like nothing in any known fleet. Their designs were sleek, organic yet angular, forged from a material that seemed to swallow light, leaving only faint silver outlines against the starfield. They were massive, each one the size of a small moon, and they moved with a silent, eerie coordination. A shocked murmur rippled through the chamber. These were not Vel-Terran designs. Their ships were blocky, functional, painted in harsh warlike colors. These new vessels were art and menace fused together. Ancient, powerful. Behold, Subin proclaimed, the Celestial Spear Fleet. A gift from the past, found dormant in the silent void of the curious expanse. A testament that destiny favors the Vel-Terran. With this armada, we will now prosecute a war of swift and decisive conclusion. Humanity has one standard cycle to surrender their extrasolar colonies and submit to hegemony oversight, or they will be removed. The hologram zoomed in on one of the Leviathan ships. Its surface was seamless, without visible weapon ports or sensor arrays, which made it even more frightening. It spoke of technologies so advanced it was beyond understanding. The chamber erupted. Questions, shouts of protest, calls for calm from the presiding Glyphian. Eugen heard none of it. The cold dread in her stomach had turned to a block of ice. She looked at the ships, at their impossible beauty, and felt only despair. Humanity's fleet was capable, designed for defense and exploration. It was nothing compared to this. They were outmatched on a scale that meant annihilation. They're bluffing, Min-soo muttered, but his face was pale. They have to be. Those can't be real. They're real, Eugen said quietly, her voice surprisingly steady. And they're not bluffing. They want a war, and now they have the hammer to win it. Her mind raced not through diplomatic solutions, but through casualty estimates, evacuation protocols for frontier worlds. It was a nightmare. The session dissolved into chaos. The Vel-Taran delegation left the chamber without another word, Subin at their head, not looking back. The message was clear. The talking was over. On Earth, in a quiet, darkened apartment in Seoul, the news played on a wall screen. Lee Hanyul sat on his floor, a half-assembled quantum relay in his lap, his tools forgotten around him. He was a man in his 60s, with kind eyes and clever hands, permanently stained with grease and solder. He had served his mandatory engineering service decades ago, and now spent his days tinkering, building little things that made his neighbors smile. He watched the replay of Subin's speech, his heart aching for Yujin, whom he had known since university. He saw the fear in her controlled expression. Then the hologram of the celestial spear fleet filled his screen. His breath caught. He leaned forward, squinting. There was something about the curve of the primary hull, the way the aft section tapered. He'd seen it before, not in a military briefing, but in old, dusty files. He scrambled up, his joints protesting, and went to his personal data terminal. It was an ancient machine, but it had storage links to the old planetary engineering archives, the ones from before council membership. He navigated through directories with names like Legacy Projects and Pre-Integration Dormant. His fingers flew. He entered security codes he hadn't used in 40 years. Finally, he found it. Project Eternal. Classification: Omega. Status: terminated. He opened the main design folder. Schematics, terabytes of them, filled his screen. And there it was. Not a perfect match for the alien hologram, the Vel-Taran had added bulky weapon mounts and crude engine extensions, marring the elegant lines, but the core skeleton, the fundamental chassis, the unique tri-helix power distribution layout. It was identical. The color drained from Hanyul's face. He zoomed in on one of the human schematics. In the corner of the image was a small, faded logo, a stylized earth with an olive branch and a shield, and below it, the project motto, Si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. The Eternal Fleet, humanity's last, greatest, and most secret project. A fleet of self-replicating, adaptive warships, built in hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, a final insurance policy in case the stars were not peaceful. Then first contact happened. The Galactic Council offered membership, and the project was mothballed. The incomplete fleet was moved to a dead system, its location a closely guarded secret, and then lost. A bureaucratic error, a nav data wipe during a system migration. The coordinates were gone. The fleet, a sleep dot until someone else found it. Hanyul stared at the screen, then back at the news feed, where a commentator was fearfully discussing the unfathomable ancient tech of the Vel-Taran. A strange, hysterical laugh bubbled in his throat, but it died before it could escape. The Vel-Taran had just declared war on humanity with humanity's own forgotten sword, and they had no idea what they were truly holding. The emergency council meeting had adjourned into a silent, suffocating dread. Back in the human delegation's quarters, Kim Yujin stood by the large viewport, staring at the sprawl of the galactic capital below. The lights of 1,000 species enclaves twinkled, a beautiful lie. The peace she had worked for her entire career was shattering. Park Min-soo was frantically compiling reports on their terminal. Initial analysis from our deep-range scouts confirms it. The Vel-Taran fleet massing at the Epsilon Indy Junction. It matches the holograms. Size, configuration, everything. Military intelligence gives U.S. a 72% probability of total strategic defeat if they engage our border defenses. His voice was flat, clinical, the numbers a wall against the panic. Yujin didn't turn. Options? Diplomatic protest is useless. They've rejected all hails. The Council is urgently debating, which means they're calculating which side will win and how to profit from it. Our only tangible option is evacuation of the frontier colonies. We start now, we might save 40% of the population before the first shot. Min-Su finally looked up from his screen, his young face aged by the weight of the news. Ambassador, they found a weapon from the old times. We can't fight that. The words old times echoed in Eugen's mind. She thought of Lee Haniel. He was an engineer of the old times, from the era before the Council, when humanity built its future alone in the dark. She had dismissed his frantic, encrypted message an hour ago as the panic of a gentle man faced with war. But now, a terrible, impossible hope began to whisper. She activated her secure comm. Haniel's face appeared on her private screen. He looked pale, his eyes wide with a feverish intensity. Eugen, you saw it. I saw our potential extinction, Haniel, she said, her voice tight. No, you saw Project Eternal. The words were quiet, but they hit Eugen like a physical blow. That name was from history class, a footnote about pre-council paranoia. A myth. That's not possible, she whispered. It was decommissioned, scrapped. It was misplaced, Haniel insisted. He began sharing his screen. A flood of schematics, design histories, and progress logs from a century ago filled her display. The files were stamped with the old Earth government seals. He pulled up a primary hull frame schematic. Then, with a tap, he placed a captured image from Subin's declaration next to it. The lines matched. The proportions were perfect beneath the ugly Velteron bolt-on weapons. Look at the energy conduit routing. No species uses the hexagonal fractal pattern. It was my professor's thesis. A human solution to a human problem. They didn't build this, Eugen. They found it. They found our fleet. The room seemed to tilt. Min-Su was now staring, his mouth slightly open. The despair in the air cracked, replaced by a dizzying confusion. Our fleet? He echoed. Eugen's diplomatic mind, trained to find angles and hidden meanings, seized the implications first. Do they know? Haniel barked a short, bitter laugh. Do they look like they know? They think they dug up a precursor god weapon. They're proud. They attached their own guns to it, like children tying rocks to a racing hoverbike. They have no idea of its core systems. He zoomed in on a cross-section of the schematic, pointing to a complex web of quantum nodes at the heart of the ship. The Eternal Fleet wasn't just ships. It was a system. It had a safeguard, a dead man's switch. The central II, what we call the steward, requires a continuous human biometric key for full activation. Without it, the fleet is just metal. Very strong, very fast metal, but maybe only 20% operational. No self-replication. No adaptive shielding. No built-in weapon systems. Built-in. Min-Su trailed off. The weapons are in the hull, Haniel said, his engineer's passion breaking through. They're part of the structure. They didn't need ports. The Velteron welded cannons onto the outside because they couldn't turn the real ones on. He was speaking faster now. They're flying a locked vault. And we might still have the key. The dizzying confusion in Eugen sharpened into a razor-edged plan. It was insane. It was their only chance. The key. Where is it? Haniel's face fell slightly. That's the problem. The key wasn't a physical thing. It was a protocol. A specific quantum resonance signature tied to the command neural net of the lead architect. That was Dr. Elias Vance. He died 60 years ago. The hope curdled. So it's useless, Eugen said, the weight returning. No, not useless, Haniel said, shaking his head vigorously. The backup was a digital imprint, stored in the project's central archive on Mars. But when the project was terminated, the archive was sealed. Physically sealed behind a 10-meter thick door of fused alloy, and the location was forgotten, purged from the active records to keep the secret. He pulled up a star map, then overlaid it with fragmented, ancient navigation data. The fleet's last known resting place is a dead system here, in the curious expanse. The Vel Terran must have stumbled on it. The archive is on Mars. We need to get inside it, find Vance's command imprint, and broadcast it. Min-Su found his voice. A broadcast? You can just take control of the fleet from light years away? Not direct control. Not like a remote. But the standby protocol is a universal signal. If we transmit the correct resonance, it should trigger the fleet's primary directive to await verified human command. It would shut down all non-essential systems. It would make them stop. Haniel's eyes were blazing. They'd be dead in the water. Eugen turned from the viewport, the lights of the alien city now looking less like a threat and more like an audience. A stage. We have one cycle. 24 hours. We need to get you to Mars, into that archive, and find that imprint. And we need to do it in absolute secrecy. If the Vel Terran even suspect what we're doing, they'll attack immediately, Min-Su finished. And if the Council finds out, Eugen added, they might try to seize the technology for themselves. We'd be trading one master for another. She looked at Haniel's determined, worried face on the screen. He was a tinkerer, not a soldier. He held the fate of billions in his hands. Can you do this, old friend? Haniel took a deep breath. He looked at the schematics of his people's greatest creation, now aimed at their heart. He thought of the arrogance in Commander Subin's eyes. I built pieces of the early prototypes with these hands, he said, holding them up. I know its soul. I have to try. Go, Eugen said. I'll arrange a fast courier from the Luna dock. Minimal crew. You're now a level 1 priority. She paused. Haniel, find the key. We'll prepare the lock. The screen went dark. Eugen turned to Min-Su. The fear was still there, but it was now joined by a dangerous electric tension. The game had changed. The Vel Terran thought they were declaring war on a helpless species. They did not know they were challenging the very makers of their weapon. They did not know that humanity's greatest strength was never its fists, but its memory, and the stubborn will of an old engineer in a dusty workshop who refused to let his people's past be used to destroy their future. Min-Su, Eugen said, her voice now crisp and clear. Begin the evacuation protocols for the colonies, publicly. Make it look like despair. Make it look like surrender. Let the Vel Terran see our fear. Let them grow confident. And contact Jin Tai-Yang intelligence. Tell him we have a target. We need every scrap of data on the Vel Terran fleet's current location, communication lines, and command structure. The hunter is about to become the prey, and they don't even know the hunt has begun. The journey to Mars was a tense, silent blur. The fast courier ship, a swift messenger, was a small vessel meant for data and diplomats, not for clandestine archaeology. Lee Haniel spent the hours staring at the Project Eternal files, committing the archive's likely internal layout to memory. The young pilot, a woman named Choi Yunji, asked no questions. Her orders were clear. Get the passenger to the Martian coordinates. Fast and quiet. They touched down in the dead of the Martian night, in a barren sector of the Arcadia Planitia. The surface was a rusty, rock-strewn plain, swept by thin, cold winds. No lights, no signs of habitation for hundreds of kilometers. This was a forgotten place. Grid reference matches the old pre-terraforming survey logs, Yunji said, her voice hushed in the cockpit. There's nothing here, sir. Haniel checked his scanner, an old military-grade unit he had modified himself. It wasn't reading nothing. It was reading a void. A perfect spherical absence of return signals buried 50 meters below the iron oxide dust. It's there. The archive is shielded. A perfect echo sink. That's the door. They suited up and stepped out onto the Martian surface. Their suit lights cut lonely cones through the darkness. Hanuel led the way, his scanner in hand, following the edge of the silent sphere in the ground. He found it near a large, weathered rock formation, a seamless, circular plate of a dull gray alloy, 10 meters across, almost completely buried. It was not meant to be found. The entrance, he said, his breath fogging his helmet visor for a second. Yunji crouched, brushing dust from the edge. No visible controls. No keypad. How do we get in? The old way, Hanuel muttered. He unspooled a cable from his pack and connected it to a port on his wrist computer. On the other end was a heavy, needle-like probe. He found a tiny, almost invisible seam in the center of the door and inserted the probe. It clicked home. His screen lit up with a cascade of archaic code, defense protocols written in dead programming languages. This was his world. He began to talk to the door, not with passwords, but with engineering concepts, with snippets of the project's original initiation code, with the mathematical harmonics of Earth's old defense grid. For an hour, he worked, Yunji watching the horizon nervously. Then, with a deep subsonic groan that vibrated through their boots, the circular door split into 6 segments and slid silently into the walls of a dark shaft. A stale puff of century-old air hissed out. A ladder led down into blackness. They descended into the heart of Mars. The chamber at the bottom was vast and cold. Rows of monolithic data servers, long dormant, stood like tombs. The only light came from their suits and from the faint, dying glow of emergency power cells in the ceiling. In the center of the room was a single pedestal, and on it rested a transparent crystal slab, inside of which was a complex lattice of frozen light, a preserved quantum neural imprint. The steward's core, Hanuel whispered, approaching it with something like reverence. And the key. Meanwhile, light years away, Jin Taiyang moved through the shadows of the galactic capital. He was a man who looked like he belonged nowhere, his face plain, his movements efficient. His team had been working non-stop since Eugen's orders. The Vel-Taran were arrogant, but not careless. Their fleet's communication was encrypted with sophisticated quantum ciphers. Cracking them directly was impossible, so Taiyang went around them. He targeted the support infrastructure. Using a combination of bribes, black market data taps, and old-fashioned eavesdropping on the lower-tier Vel-Taran logistics officers, he began to build a picture. He learned which supply frigates were servicing the Celestial Spear fleet. He tracked their courses. He intercepted drunken boasts from junior engineers about the stubborn systems on the Great, ships that refused to interface with Vel-Taran. Technology. He compiled it all and sent a secure burst to Eugen. The message was simple. Confirmation. Fleet is ours. Their control is superficial, like pilots strapped to the outside of a ship. They use external consoles to command basic movement and their own attached weapons. Internal systems are dark. Primary power fluctuating. They are straining to hold it all together. On Mars, Hanuel faced the final challenge. The crystal slab was protected by a final firewall. A voice, synthesized and ancient, echoed in the chamber. Identify for final verification. Project Eternal is terminated. State your authority. Hanuel knew the standard codes would be useless. They were for project staff. He needed the architect's authority. He thought of the old motto, the one on the schematics. He thought of the man, Dr. Vance, who must have stood here long ago. What would he have left as a final key? He spoke, not a code, but a principle. Authority is derived from responsibility. The weapon was built to protect life, not take it. I am here to correct an error and fulfill the primary directive. Safeguard humanity. Silence. Then the voice spoke again, softer. Biometric scan inconclusive. You are not Dr. Vance. I am his successor, Haniel said, his heart hammering. The weapon is aimed at our heart. I am here to put the shield back up. Another pause. A thin beam of light swept over Haniel's face from the pedestal. It was not just a scanner. It was an analyzer, reading his pheromones, his pupil dilation, the subtle heat patterns of truth in his capillaries. Stress markers high. Deception probability low. Motivation aligns with core protocols. The crystal slab flickered, and a lattice of light inside pulsed. Emergency contingency accessed. Steward command resonance is released. You have one broadcast cycle. Use it wisely, successor. The lattice of light dissolved from the crystal and streamed into Haniel's wrist computer. The device chimed, its screen displaying a complex, shifting waveform, the unique quantum signature of Dr. Vance's command authority. The key dot back in her quarters. Yujin received Taiyang's confirmation, and moments later, Haniel's success signal. The pieces were in place. But one terrible problem remained. The Vel-Terran fleet was at the border. A simple broadcast from Mars would be detected, possibly jammed, and would reveal their hand. They needed to send the signal from a place they would never expect, a place that could punch through any local jamming and speak directly to the fleet's core systems. She called. Haniel on the secure line. His face appeared, smudged with red dust, but his eyes were alive with triumph. I have it, Yujin. The key. Good. Now we must use it. We cannot broadcast from Mars or Earth. The signal must come from within their own formation. Haniel's triumph faded into confusion. That's impossible. We have no ships there. We have their ships, Yujin said, a hard smile touching her lips. Jin Taiyang's report confirms it. Their control is external. They are essentially remote controlling the fleet from command modules attached to the hulls. The fleet's own internal receivers, they are still listening. They are just waiting for the right voice. Understanding dawned on Haniel. We need to hijack their communications. Send the key not as a separate signal, but as a ghost inside their own commands. Exactly, Yujin said. We broadcast the resonance pattern, masked and piggybacked on a standard Vel-Terran operational signal. Their systems will ignore it as noise. But the deep layer receptors in the Eternal Fleet's core will hear their master's voice. They will obey. It was a desperate, brilliant plan. It required perfect timing and a slice of the Vel-Terran's own communication frequency, which Jin Taiyang was now working to acquire. The final move was set. The old engineer had found the key. The spy had found the lock. And the diplomat was ready to turn it, hoping that the sleeping giant of humanity's past would awaken at their call, and not at the command of the aliens who thought they were its masters. The next few hours would decide everything, and the Vel-Terran Armada continued its proud, silent approach, unaware of the human whisper already seeking its heart. The bridge of the Vel-Terran flagship, the Sovereign Will, was a place of hard light and sharper shadows. Commander Kang Subin stood on the command platform, his 4 eyes fixed on the main display. The human colony world of New Hope spun below, a blue and green jewel dotted with the pinprick lights of cities. It was the first target. Its fall would be a message written in fire, proving the hegemony's destiny. His crew moved with quiet efficiency, their confidence absolute. They rode in the vessels of gods. All vessels report readiness, his tactical officer stated, her voice crisp. External battery charging complete. Boarding craft are manned. The human defense fleet is forming up at the high orbital zone. primitive configurations. No match. Subin allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had done as predicted. They had scrambled their pitiful ships in a gesture of defiance. It was almost admirable in its futility. "Open a channel to the human commander," he ordered. One final chance to surrender their population centers and withdraw. As the communication request hummed into the void, a junior officer at a sensor station frowned. "Commander, I am detecting a minor power fluctuation across the Celestial Spear fleet. A 0.01% drop in secondary system cohesion." Subin glanced over, a flicker of irritation crossing his features. "The ancient systems are deep and unfamiliar. Fluctuations are expected. Focus on the primary objective." The officer nodded, chastened, and returned to his screen, a small doubt now planted in his mind. On Earth, the Situation Room was a cavern of tense silence. Kim Yujin watched the tactical display, the glowing red icons of the Vel Terran Armada dwarfing the brave blue dots of their border fleet. Park Min-soo was at her side, his face slick with sweat. "They're hailing Admiral Singh on the Terran Resolve," Min-soo reported. "Standard surrender demand?" "Stall," Yujin said, her voice like stone. Her eyes were not on the battle display, but on a separate, smaller screen. It showed a complex waveform, the key, and a progress bar. Jin Taiyang's team was attempting to inject it into the Vel Terran command stream. They had acquired a narrow frequency used for fleet-wide systems checks, a boring routine signal no one would scrutinize. The injection point was a stealth probe Taiyang had placed near a Vel Terran communications buoy days ago. The bar crept forward. 70% complete. Admiral Singh is refusing the surrender terms, Min-soo said. A hint of pride in his voice. "Then it begins," Yujin whispered Dot in his workshop. Now a makeshift command center, Lee Hanyul watched the same progress bar. He had done his part. The key was loaded, the carrier signal prepared. Now it was up to Taiyang's slicing and the physics of data transmission. He saw the Vel Terran fleet on the news feed, hanging over New Hope like a swarm of dark insects. His creations. He felt a surge of nausea. He had helped build those hulls, dreaming of protection. Now they were the threat. Injection at 80%, a calm voice from intelligence said in his earpiece. Signal integrity is holding. The piggyback is virtually undetectable. On the sovereign will, the junior sensor officer's doubt grew. The power fluctuation wasn't stabilizing. It was very slowly spreading. He saw it in the subroutines. The ancient power cores were not just fluctuating. They were disengaging, cycling down in a pattern that looked deliberate. "Commander," he said again, more urgency in his voice. "I strongly recommend a full diagnostic on the primary fleet. The energy signatures are changing." Subin turned, his patience gone. "You question the gifts of the precursors? Your next interruption will be your last. Weapons officer. Target the lead human defender. Eliminate it. Injection complete. Signal broadcast initiated," the voice said in Hanyul's ear. For a moment, nothing happened. The progress bar on Yujin's screen reached 100% and disappeared. On the main display, the Vel Terran weapons ports glowed a fierce orange as they prepared to fire. Subin smiled. This was the moment. Then every light on the Sovereign Will's bridge flickered. The main display shattered into static. The deep, constant hum of the ship's engines, a sound so fundamental it had been forgotten, stuttered and died. Silence. A deafening, absolute silence. "Report!" Subin roared, stumbling as the artificial gravity wavered for a second before, stabilizing on emergency power. Panicked voices filled the air. "We have a total primary power loss. Engines are offline. Weapons are dead. The entire fleet, look." The tactical officer cried, her voice shrill with terror. The external viewers, now on backup battery power, showed a scene from a nightmare. Across the vast formation of the celestial sphere, every single one of the majestic, terrifying ships went dark. Their running lights vanished. The glow from their improvised external cannons died. They were now just black shapes against the stars, drifting silently. The only light came from the small, blocky Velterran command modules stuck to their hulls, which now blinked with frantic, isolated emergency power. "What have they done?" Subin whispered, his arrogance shattered into confusion and dawning horror. He slammed his hands on the dead console. "Restart systems. Now. We cannot. Our controls are locked out. The ancient cores, they are not responding. They are sleeping." On the bridge of the human flagship Terran Resolve, Admiral Singh stared in disbelief. 1 second, they were staring down the barrels of overwhelming force, preparing to sell their lives dearly. The next, the invincible armada was a field of dark, silent tombs. "Admiral," a sensor officer called out, voice trembling. "We're receiving a priority communication from Ambassador Eugene. Text only. It says, 'Stand by. Do not fire.' The situation is changing." On Earth, in the silent situation room, Kim Yujin let out a breath she felt she had been holding for days. The display showed the Velterran fleet, dark and powerless. Park Min-soo was grinning. A hysterical laugh caught in his throat. It worked. By all the stars, it actually worked. Yujin didn't smile. The hardest part was next. She opened a channel, a wideband broadcast aimed directly at the Velterran flagship. She made sure her visual was clear, her uniform perfect, her face calm. On the Sovereign Will, a backup screen flickered to life, displaying her image. Subin stared at the human diplomat, his mind refusing to process what was happening. "Commander Subin," Eugene voice was clear, cool, and carried no hint of gloating. "You declared war on humanity with a weapon you did not build, could not fully understand, and do not control. You have just experienced a system-wide safety protocol. The vessels you call the Celestial Spear were built by human hands. They answer to a human voice. You are not their masters. You are their passengers." Subin felt the words like physical blows. The protests of his junior officer, the strange systems, the flawless, unmarked hulls, it all snapped into a horrible, shameful clarity. They had found a treasure and never asked who the owners were. Their great conquest was a theft, and the rightful owners had just reclaimed their property with a whisper. "This war is over." Eugene continued, her gaze unwavering. "Your fleet is immobilized. You will stand down completely. You will prepare to receive a delegation to discuss terms. Not our surrender, Commander, yours, and we will discuss the return of stolen property." The screen went blank. Subin stood amidst the ruins of his ambition, the cold, dark silence of the human-built ships pressing in around him. He had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power. Instead, humanity had taught him a lesson about history and about the quiet, deep strength of those who remember how to build what others can only hope to steal. The war had not ended with a bang, but with a silent, stunning reversal that left the victors without a single shot fired from their own guns. The Galactic Council chamber was packed. Every delegate, ambassador, and observer was present. The air hummed with a tension far different from the fear of a cycle before. Now it was thick with shock, curiosity, and for some, a new, wary respect. On the central stage, Kim Yujin stood beside Lee Hanyul. He wore a simple engineer's jumpsuit, looking out of place among the diplomats and aliens. His hands clasped tightly behind his back, opposite them. Standing without his previous arrogance was Commander Kang Subin. The Velterran delegation seemed smaller, diminished. The holographic display between them showed the Eternal Fleet, still dark and dormant, holding position at the border. The presiding Glyphian, a being of floating crystalline segments, opened the session. This council has witnessed an unprecedented event. A declaration of war was met not with weapons, but with silence. We now seek understanding. Ambassador Yujin, you have the floor. Yujin stepped forward, her voice calm and clear, carrying to every corner of the room. Thank you. The Vel-Taran hegemony declared war based on a false premise, that they held overwhelming power. They did not. They held a key they did not forge, to a lock they did not understand. She gestured to the fleet on the display. These ships are not precursor relics. They are human. They are the product of Project Eternal, a defense initiative from before our council membership, built in a time of uncertainty and sealed away when peace was offered. The Vel-Taran found lost property and claimed it as a weapon of conquest. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Subin's head bowed slightly, a gesture of profound shame for his species. When they threatened us with our own shield, Yujin continued, we had a choice. We could have reactivated the fleet's full capabilities and turned it against them. The result would have been their total annihilation. She let the harsh word hang in the air. We chose a different path. She nodded to Haniel. The engineer stepped up nervously, cleared his throat, and spoke. His voice was softer, but the technical certainty in it commanded attention. The Eternal Fleet was never just a weapon. Its core protocol is safeguarding. It was designed to protect human lives, not take any. Commander Subin could only access basic functions because the heart of the system, the steward AI, was asleep, waiting for authorized human command to fulfill its true purpose. He looked directly at the Vel-Taran commander. You were riding a sleeping giant. We merely reminded it who it was supposed to protect. Yujin took over again. Humanity's response demonstrates our core principles. We value creation over destruction. We prefer peace enforced by certainty over peace enforced by terror. Therefore, we propose this to the Council and to the Vel-Taran hegemony. The display changed. It showed the Eternal Fleet, but now with new symbols. The emblems of the Galactic Council and multiple member species, including the Vel-Taran, superimposed over the human sigil on the hulls. We will not reclaim the fleet for exclusive human use, Yujin announced. A stunned silence fell. Instead, we will share it. The steward AI will be reactivated under a joint command protocol. This fleet will become the Galactic Sentinel Force. Its mission will be the defense of all, council worlds from external threats, not from each other. Its command will require a majority consensus from a council of members, including the Vel-Taran hegemony. The technology will remain locked, its self-replication and most powerful systems activated only by this collective will. Humanity will provide the foundational code, but the key will belong to everyone. The silence broke into a wave of astonished whispers. It was an act of staggering political generosity or immense strategic cunning. By giving it away, humanity made it impossible for anyone, including themselves, to ever wield it as a tool of domination. It transformed the ultimate weapon into the ultimate shield for all. Commander Subin finally looked up, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. You would share it? After what we did? Yujin met his gaze. You attacked us with a tool you found. We are offering you a place at the table to help build with tools we understand. The choice for war was yours. The choice for this peace is ours. We make it to show that humanity's strength is not in being the sole keeper of a powerful secret, but in being the architects of a safer galaxy for all. The Glyphian pulsed with a soft light, a sign of deep contemplation. The Vel-Taran hegemony must first formally withdraw its declaration of war and accept the terms of stand down. Subin straightened his shoulders. The pride was gone, replaced by a grim, hard-won clarity. He addressed the council, his voice rough but clear. The Veltaran hegemony withdraws the declaration. We accept the human terms. We will participate in the proposed Sentinel Force. We have seen that true power is not in the weapon, but in the wisdom of the hand that holds it. We misjudged that hand. It was over. The war that never was had ended. In the weeks that followed, Lee Haniel worked with mixed teams of engineers, including Veltaran, to slowly, carefully reactivate the Steward II under the new shared protocols. Kang Subin, stripped of his command, but appointed as a liaison, often watched. He saw not smugness in the human engineers, but a focused dedication. They were fixing a mistake, not gloating over a victory. One evening, as Haniel was running a systems check on the flagship's bridge, now stripped of its crude, Veltaran Edition Subin approached. "Engineer Lee," he said, "a question. You had the key. You could have taken everything. Why give it away?" Haniel wiped his hands on a cloth, looking at the sleek human lines of the bridge he had helped design a lifetime ago. "A tool is only as good as the purpose it serves," he said simply. "If we kept it just for us, it would only ever be a tool for fear. Now it's a tool for, maybe, trust. It's a better purpose. My professor, Dr. Vance, he built it to make sure we had a future. This way, it helps make sure everyone does." Subin was quiet for a long moment, looking out the main viewport at the stars. "We searched the dead system for years. We thought we found destiny. We only found a reflection of our own hunger. You looked at the same find and saw a responsibility." He gave a slow, respectful nod, a Veltaran gesture. "The lesson is learned." Back on Earth, Kim Yujin watched the reports come in. The Sentinel Force was operational, a neutral, powerful presence. Humanity's status had changed. They were no longer the new, peaceful species on the block. They were the ones who had built a sword, had it pointed at their own throat, and had calmly reforged it into a shield for their enemies, as well as themselves. They were not feared as warriors, but respected as builders and peacemakers. The galaxy now knew that humanity's past was deep, their ingenuity profound, and their mercy, when tested, was their greatest strength of all. The story of the war that wasn't became a legend, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to a threat is not to fire a shot, but to simply remind everyone who built the guns in the first place and what they were truly built for.